Hey everybody, welcome to our Soulcast Media Live. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up just so I know the audio is working great. But first of all, I just want to welcome everybody to our Soulcast Media Live. This is a special one because I have a very special guest, Sarah Johnston, who I'm going to have introduce herself in just a little bit. But a little bit first about what we are here today. So we're here doing our Soulcast Media Live. My name is Jessica Chen, for those who don't know. I'm the founder and CEO of Soulcast Media, and we are a business communications agency. So we work with folks from all over the world on communications. Now, as we're getting introduced and settled in right now, I'm just looking at the chat right now. Sarah, you probably might see it too, but we have people from all over the world right now. Over 150 of you guys are here. People from somewhere in the US, India, Singapore. It's just absolutely amazing seeing everybody united here on this platform. Now, before we get started, I have to say thank you to our sponsor, NeedThat.com, for sponsoring this amazing event. For those who don't know, today I have my guest, Sarah Johnston, here. And we're going to be talking about a topic very close to both of our hearts. For me, it's all about communications. And for Sarah, it's all about career advancement. And we're really combining forces here today to really share our expertise, regardless really of where you are in your career. Because as we all know, career communications, they really go hand in hand. But without further ado, Sarah Johnston, can you share a little bit about yourself? I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm so honored to be here, and I'm looking in the chat and I see people from Denmark and Michigan and India and Canada, and it's just really an honor and so amazing at what technology can do, that we can really unite here online. But as Jessica mentioned, I am the founder of The Briefcase Coach and also Job Search Secret Weapon. And my whole vision and goal is to help job seekers land amazing jobs. And I do that through strategic communication, strong career documents like resumes and LinkedIn profiles and cover letters, and also through interview coaching, helping people present the very best version of themselves in person and on paper.
And we all know communications is a huge part of that. So my goal today is, it's a conversation. Sarah and I are going to have a chat. I have some questions for her. I know she has some questions for me, but this is very much for you guys as well. So as Sarah and I are talking, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us, please throw it in the chat function. We'll try to get to them. No promises, but we will do our best. We'll try to get to your questions because, again, this time is for you, and we're both just so grateful that you guys are spending, whether it's your morning, your afternoon, or evening with us. And just so you guys know, this is going to be about 40 minutes or so, and you'll know once we wrap up. But again, this is just a time for us, all of us who are here, to enjoy this conversation. So Sarah, let's just get started. I have so many great questions for you, and I'm sure a lot of these questions are what the audience perhaps might be interested in. So Sarah, let's just kind of start from the very top. I know you talk about career success and you do a lot of work with communications as well. Why is communications and career success so closely linked together, in your opinion?
Because no one cares more about your career than you do. I mean, I remember as like a 22, 23-year-old, like I kind of thought somebody would grab me by the hand and like help me navigate a career and life success. And that never happened for me. I'm not from a family with lots of connections. Like my parents didn't open the door for me and like help me get 5 or 6 jobs out of school. Like I was navigating that myself. And so, you know, going back to that statement of nobody cares as much about your career as you have to own your career. You have to know what you want, and you have to leverage your connections and your strengths in order to get that, because no one's like, there's no fairy godmother out there for your job.
I resonate with that because, so for those who don't know, my career before I started Soulcast Media, I was a television news reporter. So I was in that industry for about 10 years, and no one in my family was in that industry. So I didn't have like a leg in or, you know, a foot in the door already. So for me, I really had to essentially showcase myself. And just like you said, Sarah, you have to be your own best advocate, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously hard work, performance, that's all, let's say not assumed, but of course we all have to do that. Mm-hmm. But just having a stellar resume, even though that can speak for itself in some ways, They want to hear you talk about it, why you're passionate about it, why you are qualified when there are perhaps many, many other people who are just as qualified as you. I don't know. What do you think, Sarah?
Oh, absolutely. When you look back on you getting that very first job as a newscaster, because that very first job is so hard to get, what do you think you did really well to land that role and to impress the hiring managers? Is there anything, different that you did?
Oh my gosh. Well, I actually have a very great answer to that because for us in the news industry, and this is kind of like insider industry insight. So for us, we also have a resume that we have to send out to the hiring managers. But for us, we also have a video compilation that we have to put together as part of our resume, because when you're a news reporter on television, they want to see how you look, how you sound, right? Now, I remember when I was at the interview table, and I interviewed at a lot of different television stations at the time, I knew that my resume more or less looked like a lot of other people's at the time. For me, I hadn't graduated from a top journalism school, so I kind of knew that my fight would be a little bit harder, but I knew where my advantage could be. It's how I linked together why I wanted this so badly that I couldn't necessarily express on the resume itself, right? You can never say on the resume, I really want this job. But when you're communicating, you can really show that passion, that emotion when you get that opportunity in front of the hiring managers to show, how willing you are, how far you're willing to go to make sure that you're not just, of course, getting the job for yourself, but you're helping the organization succeed as well. It's kind of like a marriage and partnership.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because speaking kind of as a former corporate recruiter, I can't tell you how many times I brought the perfect candidate to the hiring manager and thought that they would just absolutely love the candidate. And then afterwards, when we were debriefing, they said, they were good on paper, but I just didn't know if they really wanted the job. And so being able to do exactly what you said, of just convey that passion and connect your energy to the energy of the organization, is so important.
Absolutely. So really quickly, just want to welcome everybody who is just joining our conversation for our Soulcast Media Live. I have Sarah Johnston here, and we're talking about how to build that communications confidence for career success, regardless of whether you're starting out, you're in the middle, or you're in a C-suite position. Sarah and I are chatting about not only our experiences, but also about why we think everybody needs to think about communications in order to continuously succeed, regardless of what career industry they're in. So, Sarah, I have another question that I really have to ask you. So, a lot of people, and I'm sure you work with a lot of folks on this, it's interviewing. Interviewing for that potential new job, or even if you're at a current company and you're trying to maybe get to that next level, and more or less, perhaps there's some interview involved there. What are your tips when it comes to showcasing your best self in a job interview?
I think it starts with research. Number one, you really need to know who you're meeting with, and not just the individual that you're meeting with, because you absolutely should go on their LinkedIn profile and find as much intel as you can so that you can have smart, small talk with that person. But you also need to know about the company and what their pain points are. A lot of times job seekers will not spend a lot of time digesting the job description. And I think that's a big mistake, because the job description can, in a lot of ways, be a roadmap for the interview. And a lot of questions are actually based off of key bullet points on the job description. So using that job description as a tool as you're practicing can be really important. The other tip that I would offer to your listeners today is it's all about customization. You cannot give the same answer for every single interview that you go on. And people do this. People give the same tell me about yourself response, or their favorite, or their same weakness response. You have to say, what does this organization care about? What are their pain points? And really spoon feed your listener, the things that they're listening for. So in your tell me about yourself, if you know that they're looking for someone who's highly organized and who is excellent with Excel, you might want to lead with that in your tell me about yourself as the way that you describe yourself, so that when someone is listening for that first minute and a half of that interview, they've already got some great content about you that resonates with the job. And then the rest of the interview, they'll just sit confirming that they already like you.
Do you work with people, Sarah, who have a hard time figuring out how they can talk about how great and qualified they are, but they're afraid of perhaps boasting too much? Like, how do you advise your clients on what is this balance? Like, what's too much of quote unquote showing off? Or is that a rule that goes completely out the window when you're interviewing?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, you know, so much of it is tone and how you present it. And, you know, I think for a lot of people who are considered high EQ leaders, they are going to be really thoughtful about the way that they present what they accomplished. And so I think it's assumed that when you're the leader of a team, that you are not the individual who did everything by yourself, that you had a team that supports you. So for leaders, it's important to use words like we and my team, but not shy away from sharing the results. And that's where I think a lot of people misstep, is that they forget to quantify the work that they do. And when you can give a number and show value or show the result, it's really hard to argue that. That's a strong, response to the question, and it doesn't come across as braggy when you're sharing real numbers. So I think using using inclusive language, but then backing it up with a number can be really helpful. What have you found to help your clients?
Well, first of all, I think you literally hit the nail right on the head. You said tone matters, using words like we, us, and then having numbers. Honestly, like, I do agree. I think that is kind of like the magic formula. Now, for me, I work with a lot of people who also kind of struggle with the advocating for yourself, and which is why I wanted to ask you that. And I'll actually kind of talk a little bit about my own background. So obviously, I'm Asian American, and I think, a little bit about personally speaking, growing up, I had a hard time figuring out how to balance, talking about my accomplishment, because I remember growing up, my parents would always say, don't boast because you're going to rub people the wrong way, kind of keep your accomplishments to yourself, because again, nobody likes anybody who's like showing off. Be humble, things like that. Like, that's just from a cultural point of view, things that I was taught. So of course, fast forward to the working world, you start to see that the people who are getting these coveted opportunities are people who are right there, who are like, I'm here, I'm ready to go, like, I'm qualified. Yet I felt that I saw myself kind of just hiding behind my desk a little bit, because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I know I can do it. I'm just as qualified, but for some reason I had that struggle. So I'm in the process of actually writing a book right now. So just
cool.
Letting everybody know, but it's not out there yet. But this book is actually talking about the struggle and how I overcame the struggle of this mentality of one side of my brain was telling me this one thing versus in, let's say, Western corporate society, which is the world that we live in now, was telling me to act in another way. So it wasn't necessarily giving up one side of me to achieve the other. It was just trying to find this balance. And I think one of the things that I came up with is, like, in order to succeed in anything, we have to be adaptable and flexible. Mm-hmm. I feel like, having, like you just mentioned, Sarah, having one elevator pitch, one answer for every question in every interview situation, yeah, that doesn't necessarily work. You have to walk into a room. You have to feel the room. You have to feel the people out. And then from there, you can be like, okay, I'm kind of getting this vibe. How can I adjust my communications so that I'm meeting them where they're at? So that's actually just one thing. I don't know if that's ever something that you've kind of like resonated with, but for me, I'm like, wow, adaptability, flexibility, being able to kind of mold yourself in terms of, making sure you're presenting yourself in the best way possible, unique to each situation, is really critical.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay.
Comments, and I'm seeing that a few other people are saying that they resonate with your story as well, Jessica. So I think there's clearly a need for your book.
Thank you. Well, first of all, yes, please, if anybody has any questions, I actually do see some coming in. We'll try to make sure that we get to them. But you know what? Let me just ask one question that I see right now, since we're talking about interviewing. So this is actually from Brooks. So Brooks, what are some good questions that we can ask at the end of an interview to show more of our intellect? Something other than, so when can I expect to hear back? So Sarah, I'm going to throw this one at you first. So what do you think are some best strategies to end an interview so everybody's ending and walking away kind of feeling good?
I love this question. Great question. So I think one is you can ask questions that show that you are listening. So if the hiring manager or the recruiter who's talking to you, tells you a little bit about the role, you may want to jot down some questions during the interview and ask follow-up questions. So questions that demonstrate good listening skills are great. Questions that demonstrate that you did your research are also really good. So maybe you are listening to the CEO's annual report or statement, and he said something in the annual statement about a future goal of the company. Maybe you could ask in the interview how this particular department will be aligned with the strategic mission of this goal that you heard about in the annual letter or the annual report. So something that demonstrates that you did research. And then also a question that maybe ask around about culture and culture within that department would also be good, because you want to make sure that you are a fit for that role and that opportunity. You want to make sure it's a two-way conversation and not just them interviewing you, that you actually like the job and that you're a fit for the role as well. What do you think? Are there any questions that you would add?
I think a really great way just to always end it is to, first of all, be mindful of what I always talk about this, like your energy, right? Yeah. If you're ending, you want to make sure instead of being like, and let's say this was like a hours long interview at this point, right? It's like been 3 hours and everyone's exhausted. Even though you're exhausted, you want to make sure that you are ending on a high note. So always express how grateful you are, how happy you were able to spend the last 1 hour, 2 hours with them, meeting the entire team, and continuously show that you're just so happy and grateful, right? Once you're done with the interview, all people have is the impression that you made during that time, right? They always say first impressions matter, which I absolutely agree. In fact, there's a saying that impressions are made within the first 7 seconds. And I agree with that. I think it's actually quite fast. But I also agree that how you end it and making sure that you're maintaining that, hey, this was great. I'm so happy I got to meet you, got to chat with you, got to learn about the company. Even do kind of like a recap like that, right? Just kind of go through like I'm so happy we did this, we did that, just so you remind the hiring manager of, what you remember through this whole process. I always think, again, energy, showing that gratefulness is really key, because once we get off that call or in-person meeting, I'm going to walk away, for example, if I'm the hiring manager, and be like, oh, that was actually pretty good. I actually enjoyed that conversation. So for me, I'm always thinking, how can I make the other person feel that I enjoyed that time with them? So
that's brilliant.
Okay, so one of the other questions that I actually saw come up a few times, and this is actually a little bit more technical, and I think it's kind of a good just for us, you and I, just to kind of talk about it, but it's really regards to writing resumes. And I know this is kind of more of your expertise, but I think more or less a lot of us will encounter this at some point where we have to write our resumes, whether it's on LinkedIn, right, or just a very traditional resume. So this one I'm just going to pull up. It's going to be from Prajwal. Literally, Sarah, how do you write a resume? What are your key tips here that people can take away?
So similarly with preparing for an interview, you really need to know what your targets are before you even start writing a resume. Because we know Marketing 101 is know your target audience and know their pain points. And so there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all resume. You need to make sure that if you're one of 100 applicants for one position, that your resume is going to resonate with the recruiter or hiring manager. So when I'm writing a resume, I literally want to see 2 or 3 job descriptions that are in alignment, that describe the type of work that you want to do in the future. And then I literally get a highlighter, pen out, and I look at keywords and key phrases. And then I look at the requirements section, and I treat the requirements section of a job description as if it were a behavioral interview. So if they're looking for someone, I'm just going to pull this out of a hat, like who has Salesforce experience, I may ask myself, okay, tell me about a time that I used Salesforce and what were my results? Why did using Salesforce matter to the business and the bottom line? And so then I would take that question that I would ask myself and create a result statement from it. So maybe I implemented Salesforce, and by implementing Salesforce, I was able to save time by X%. And wherever possible on a resume, you want to try to quantify your answers and give a number or give a result. A lot of people make the mistake of making the resume look like a job description, and they have responsible for, and that is so old school. If you have a resume that says responsible for in every single bullet point, it's not going to stand out, and people are going to have a hard time understanding the impact that you had. You want to be able to articulate the impact that you had on the business, the bottom line, and creating efficiencies and driving culture. And then another thing that I'll mention just quickly is right now, companies want to hire well-rounded people. And I saw a question that somebody asked. They said, tell me about the books you have. One of them is, EQ Applied, Justin Brizio. I'm a big fan of his. But in resumes now that I'm writing for executives, I'm talking about EQ. We're listing out employee engagement scores. We're listing out diversity, equity, and inclusion results, things that they've done to make the workplace more diverse, equitable, and inclusive for others. We're talking about culture on resumes, how they've driven and inspired culture. So a resume is not necessarily just about bottom line, it's about people management and development as well.
EQ is one of the most important skills that I think all of us have the ability to learn. I remember the first time I ever heard of the word emotional intelligence. I think this was probably about 20 years ago. And I remember thinking, wow, what an interesting concept. Because back in the days, you just think it's whatever you score in your IQ, right? And what really kind of changed my mind into wanting to learn how to increase my own EQ was learning that it's actually something that can increase. It's something that we actually have control over. If we want to learn how to have better EQ, have that better social awareness, learn how to work with other people, listen, engage, and even just understand ourselves. I don't know, even 20 years ago, I had this inkling that, even if somebody, didn't have the highest IQ score, if they had a high EQ score, I felt like that was a just as competitive, if not even more competitive skill level. Let's talk, I actually do want to talk a little bit more about EQ since we actually just touched upon it, which actually reminded me, we did a Soulcast Media Live with one of my other friends, Gemma, who's also an EQ expert. And we talked so much about some of the things that you need to do. But what would you say, Sarah, for those who know about EQ, and how do they even begin to learn how to develop it? What are some of your tips and tricks here? I know you have that book.
Yeah, it's a great book. When you look at the data for what companies are going to be looking for in the future of work, obviously there's a need for technical skills. But beyond technical skills, you need people who can relate to people and connect and sell and create relationships, because you need that person who can connect the dots between people and technology. So ways that you can kind of flex your EQ, it's volunteering to lead a small group and asking really thoughtful questions and engaging with that small group. Demonstrating EQ can listen to the needs of other people and make sure that you're being resourceful to those individuals. I'm like blanking on all of the lists.
No, and I would actually just add, like what you just mentioned, Sarah, starting out by just reading books on EQ is probably a really good start. I mean, there's tons and tons of books on this. And then from what you're reading, you kind of take that, and then once you go into your work, whether you're walking into a team meeting, whether you're engaged with your boss one-on-one, kind of subtly observe like how you are reacting in those situations, as well as how the other person is responding. And I think that awareness probably is already 50% of it. Honestly, it's already 50% of EQ, right? Because what I notice is a lot of people go in, whether it's they go in with a very like strict agenda, I just want to get these things done, but they're not necessarily observing how people are reacting and perceiving and receiving their response. So honestly, if everybody walks into their next meeting, whether it's tomorrow or later today, with just a little bit more of that awareness, I think that can be huge. And I think, and even relating it back to communication, Sarah, that's part of being a very good communicator. A communicator who's strong isn't just about what they say. It's also making sure that the way they say it is being received the way they intend to, right? We've all been in those situations where you say something and it doesn't land the way you intended to. And that's okay. Sometimes, it's trial and error. But I think being a strategic communicator is also having that social awareness too. Okay, so one of the things that I actually wanted to also ask you, Sarah, today was, So we know we talked about interviewing, we talked about interview skills and how you can showcase yourself to really stand out. But for those who are in their current position, their current jobs right now, why is it still important for them to find those opportunities to speak up? And have you worked with people who are wanting to advance in their career, but they're feeling stuck? And do you notice that sometimes it does have to do with their communications and how comfortable they feel? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. I do work with these individuals, and I think that you're right. When you really dive in deep and you start asking really great questions, you uncover that often these individuals aren't volunteering for strategic projects, and that they are focused on maybe really head down work that isn't cross collaborative. They're not getting a lot of exposure to people outside of their department. So my best advice to these individuals is to focus on relationships outside of your group, because in a job search, if you have relationships with senior level leaders in other groups, you never know. They may move on to another organization that you value, and these people can be great internal champions for you. Having cross-functional partners and teammates can make the work go smoother. You can be recognized for other work outside of kind of your realm. I would also say that for some of these individuals, because they're not volunteering for strategic projects, they are doing what I call office housework. And I borrowed this phrase or terminology from the Harvard Business Review. A lot of times women especially are doing office housework, but it's work that's not mission strategic. Maybe they're throwing the office party. Maybe they are doing like a office celebration that they're planning, but it's not work that necessarily gets recognized by the leadership. So for someone wanting to level up, I would encourage them to also say, how are they positioning themselves for that next role? Are they looking at that next job description that they want to do? And are they evaluating what steps they need to take to make sure that their resume is in alignment with that next level job description? And are they raising their hand appropriately for the right work that connects with that next role?
That is such a great point. You mentioned you also want to be strategic about what projects you are kind of gunning for too. Yeah, is it going to be time well spent that's going to advance you? So you are positioning yourself to show that you're capable for that bigger opportunity, right? One thing that kind of I feel many people may ask about is, okay, Sarah and Jessica, I'm sold. I know I need to kind of volunteer for that next opportunity, but how? How do I do that? Where do I go? Who do I talk to, right? And I think perhaps the initial thought of it can be overwhelming, right? It's like, you don't just say, I want to do it, right? Maybe it does take a little bit more art to it and trying to figure out how to start. But I think my kind of tip for something like that is it just starts with expressing your interest to just one person. Just start with one person and showcase, whether that's, I don't want to say maybe it's a person who's in charge of that department, whatever it is, just start to kind of like engage yourself in that process. Start engaging conversation with that one person. And then from there, slowly, and I actually believe this is true, slowly from there, you will start to build what I call your army of influence. These are people who are going to start to know you, who are going to advocate for you. And then when the opportunity does come, they'll be like, oh, right, Jessica or Sarah, they mentioned that they wanted. We actually really like Jessica and Sarah. Let's bring them on board, right? I don't know. I generally think that's kind of how the flow is. It may not happen overnight, but I think that's kind of how, from a social context, I imagine that's kind of how it works. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely spot on there. So telling people and articulating exactly what you want to do. Sometimes it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, help me help you. So sometimes you just need to tell your boss, I'd like to do more of this. Can you help me think of ways that I can do more of this thing that I really care about? And just verbalizing that thing that you care about. I work with a lot of career sprinters, and I define a career sprinter. And again, this isn't a definition that I created myself, but a career sprinter is someone who maybe is the first to the boardroom, the youngest in their age category to reach a leadership position. And I've found that from working with these people, they're often raising their hands for projects that no one else wants to do. And so if your goal is to rise the ranks of the career ladder really quickly, maybe it's not just picking a project that you enjoy. Maybe it's picking a project that no one else wants to do and doing a really great job in delivering on that project. So when you're thinking about volunteering, ask yourself what your end goal is before you raise your hand.
Now, speaking of volunteering, I know a lot of people are like, I'm so busy. I have a million things on my to-do list every day. I don't know how I'm going to find this time to volunteer, to take on a new project. I know a lot of people will have that response, and I get it. Yeah, I'm sure all of us have a long to-do list, but the way we see volunteering for a strategic project, whether it's something that's desirable or not necessarily desirable, is it gives you this one thing, visibility. Mm-hmm. And I truly feel visibility is one of the most important things for career advancement. I mean, you're the career expert here, Sarah, but you can tell me if that's true or not. But I truly believe that's the case. In fact, I just released, well, maybe about 2 months ago, one of my LinkedIn learning courses about how you can develop visibility in the workplace when remote. And really my thesis in this LinkedIn learning course, which I highly encourage everybody to go watch, you can just check it out on my profile. The reason why visibility is so important, even when you're remote, is because of those opportunities you can get. Truly, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. You can't expect other people to be thinking about you all the time, because everybody else has their list of, things that they have to accomplish, people that they're accountable to, right? But if they're like, oh, right. Oh, I saw Jessica's name here. Or, I remember Jessica saying this. If you're constantly top of mind without necessarily intruding, I do think that that's how people are going to be like, that's right. I remember him or her.
Course, and I thought your thesis was brilliant. And as an entrepreneur, I have to be visible to be top of mind. This is why I do lives. This is why I show up in content and on social media, because I want people to think about me when they need a career expert to help them level up in their career. And so for your listener who's thinking from a job perspective, you want to be visible. You want the decision makers within your company to know your name and know who you are and know that you are someone that they can trust to get the job done.
So first of all, we are just flying right now, Sarah. Like we've been chatting for over 35 minutes, and I know I promised everyone this is only going to be about 40, 45 minutes. I do want to take maybe like 1 or 2 questions, and I feel like I still have so many questions for you. But one question that I do want to ask you is about how you present yourself. I know you probably prep a lot of your clients when they have to present themselves for a job interview or for any other career opportunity. What are some of your tips on how you can present yourself so you really are showcasing your best self, and why does it matter, really? What are some of your thoughts?
So we're in a new age where, like, when I was prepping people 2 years ago, I was prepping people for an in-person interview. And when you're prepping for an in-person interview, there's a lot of factors that you think about. You think about what it's like to walk into an office and what it's like to have a conversation with a receptionist and what it's like to make small talk in the office of the person interviewing you. And there may be some listeners today who are going to have an in-office interview in the next week, and that's great. But many of the people that we're talking to today are going to be having virtual interviews, which is a whole new ball of wax. And with a virtual interview, there's a lot that you have to think about that maybe you don't have to think about with a regular interview. For example, as you can see, my lighting isn't very great right now. I got a new... Yeah, it's okay. I just recently moved and I'm in a new office and I haven't found my lighting that I really like right yet, but lighting matters. And so thinking about the way that you have your background set up and what the background looks like is a reflection of you as well, because if you have a cluttered desk, people are going to see it in an interview and it's going to maybe be a reflection of your personal brand. You also have to think about what you wear. And in an interview, even on video, the way that you dress, again, is that reflection. So I'm wanting to have a more, I consider this kind of like a fireside chat with you guys. I want this to be personal and intimate. So I'm wearing a more casual shirt. If we were interviewing today and it was more of a formal interview, I would be potentially in a suit or something that's a little bit more formal. So you really need to think about the audience that you're talking to, how they will be dressed, and what you'll be potentially wearing on the job and how formal the meeting is. So you want to control your background and control yourself as well. What do you think, Jessica?
You touched on all the points that I think are just so important. In fact, I have another LinkedIn learning course literally titled Developing Executive Presence on Video Conference Calls. And it provides all the tips of just like what you said, Sarah, what you can be mindful of in terms of what you're wearing, your background. You're so spot on. What you plan, choose to intentionally or unintentionally show is saying lots of things about you, right? Like for you, when I see those books, I'm like, oh, Sarah likes to read. She cares about learning, developing. Like that's the message. I see that plant behind you. Oh, you know, there's a warmth. That's kind of the word that I think when I see things like that. But it's all saying and conveying a message about you. You mentioned lighting is really important. I know you definitely invested some time into perfecting your lighting, but that's the thing. I actually have a light here too. And you know, something as simple as that can really make a difference, because what you don't want is to go into an interview where your laptop camera is shooting up your nose. You are completely dark because the window is behind you, so you're a silhouette. That just does not really create a good first impression. But in this LinkedIn learning course, again, in my profile, I talk a lot about this. But yes, presentation matters. Now, I want to take one question before we kind of wrap things up. And this is more of a technical interview question, but I also think it's very important because I've heard this many, many times. So I'm going to pull it up, Sarah. You probably will see it too. But it's from one of our members here. So what is a smart answer to the question, what is your goal for the next 5 years in a job interview? I'm sure a lot of people kind of get this question, perhaps as a wrapping up. I don't know. But what are your tips for such an open-ended question like this?
This is a trick question, and you do not want to fall into the trap. I have been a recruiter, and I've asked this question, and people have given me really honest, passionate answers about how they want to do something not at the company. I've had people tell me that in 2 years, they want to go back to graduate school and they want to get a degree in something completely unrelated to the job, or how they want to start their own business. And that is great. And I'm so happy for those people. But as a hiring manager, hiring managers are thinking, what's in this for me? And even though we know that the average candidate is only in a job they move jobs every 3 to 4 years. If you're giving us a reason not to hire you and you're saying that you're potentially going to go to grad school in 2 years, we may consider another candidate, even if you are a rock star, because you've given us that red flag. The other thing is I don't want to encourage you to lie, but I want you to look at where your career could potentially grow if you were to take that role. And so even though you may be taking this job and you may see it as a stepping stone in your career, ask yourself, what do you want to gain from this role? What skill set do you want to learn? How do you want to grow? And how can you apply that? So for example, let's say you're interviewing for a social media marketing role. Maybe the job is a step down for you, and maybe, without a doubt, you could do the job. You still have to ask yourself, how am I going to grow? And so in this particular position, hypothetically, let's just say you're doing a lot of SEO and content marketing, and that's the pain point of the job, and that's what they're really looking for. You could say something along the lines of, I'm really looking to level up my SEO skills. I admire the work that you guys are doing here. And I know that as a leader, you're at the forefront of content marketing. And so I really hope to learn and grow from you and potentially be a leader in SEO in the future. I just wing that. I would obviously be more strategic in the future and would have a more thoughtful answer, but you want to understand the pain point of the company and connect your goal with that company goal.
I love how you're saying, don't fall into the trap of this answer. I think, a lot of people are like, oh, let me just tell you what I plan to do in 5 years without being really strategic about it. So no, that's fantastic. And I wanted to pull this question up because I do think that these types of questions where you really can kind of take it one way or the other is really important, because you have to be careful with what you say, which goes into communications. But I'm going to just, wrap up our time here because, well, first of all, Sarah, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for everybody. We have more than 200 people who've been watching and who have stayed with us this entire time. But as we're kind of wrapping up, Sarah, is there anything that you want to share? Any final tips or tricks? And I have some, final parting words I'd love to share with the audience as well. Anything that you want to share before we head out?
Yeah, well, it was truly an honor to be here. I love your audience. I love the questions that you asked, Jessica. You're so thoughtful, and I really appreciate all the time that you went into planning this. I would encourage people, if you aren't already following me on LinkedIn, you can find me. I'm Sarah Johnston. You can also go to my company website, briefcasecoach.com, and then I'll just share that in like late July, I have some really exciting news that's coming out about Job Search Secret Weapon. And so I hope that people will get on my email list so that they can stay in touch and learn about this exciting news.
Everyone, please follow Sarah Johnston. Like, she is the career person you want to follow. If you don't follow her on LinkedIn already, like every day she's providing all these great tips and strategies. So I highly encourage you guys to follow her. But again, thank you everybody for watching this Soulcast Media Live. Again, it flew by as it always does. And just so you guys know, I do these about once a month. I bring in an expert and we talk and we just have these kind of conversations. But again, this is really for you guys to just kind of get thinking about yourself, improving, and of course, improving communications. Again, my name is Jessica Chen, and I'm so excited for you guys all to be here. I have to thank our sponsors again, NeedThat.com, for sponsoring this fantastic event. And if anybody has any follow-up questions for either me or Sarah, please reach out to us through LinkedIn. We're both very, very active here. And we look forward to seeing you guys soon. And please stay safe. Bye, everyone.